Fritz was lecturing the eggs again. You could tell by the way his voice rose through the kitchen vent, a rich mix of culinary prayer and blasphemy, that the yolks weren't obeying. I was halfway through sorting the morning mail when he swore in German, which meant breakfast would be late, and Wolfe would soon emerge from his room demanding an explanation that would end in peace negotiations over the stove. I had just flipped through the third envelope marked Advertising Circular when the phone on my desk barked once, sharp and mean, like it had something urgent to confess. Wolfe's rule was that phones before 10 a.m. were either a nuisance or a portent. This one turned out to be both. "Nero Wolfe's residence," I said. A man's voice answered, low, cautious, trained to say nothing he didn't have to. "You handle his appointments?" "When they're worth handling," I said. "Who's calling?" He hesitated. "My name's Khan. I'm due to see Mr. Wolfe at midnight." That one pulled me upright. "Midnight's a social hour, not business. You sure you've got the right detective?" "Yes," he said quietly. "It concerns a death that hasn't happened yet." Before I could push him, the line went dead. Not clicked, dropped, like someone had cut it. I looked toward the hall. Wolfe was already there, dressing gown hanging loose, eyes half open but mind sharp as a scalpel. "Archie," he said, "your tone suggested novelty." "Guy named Khan," I told him. "Says he's got an appointment with you, after midnight. Claims he's expecting a murder, his own maybe." Wolfe frowned as if the idea itself were uncivilized. "Midnight," he repeated. "An absurd hour. Did he specify the nature of the threat?" "He specified hanging up," I said. He moved to the desk, scanning the caller log, though he already knew the number wouldn't be there. "Fritz," he called, "cancel the soufflé. We shall dine on cold cuts this evening." That meant the wheels were turning. Wolfe never adjusted a meal unless mortality was involved. He settled behind the desk, fingers steepled. "Archie, telephone Saul Panzer. Instruct him to discover everything public and private about any individual named Khan residing in Manhattan." "You're taking the appointment." "I'm acknowledging its existence," Wolfe said. "Whether it merits attendance depends upon its punctuality." The call to Saul took 2 minutes. By the time I hung up, Wolfe was already pacing, 3 full steps and back, which for him ranked as aerobics. "You're expecting him to come?" I asked. "No," he said. "I'm expecting the event he predicted. A man who anticipates his own death by appointment is either a dramatist or a corpse in rehearsal." The doorbell rang then. Hard, decisive, not the kind of knock that waited for an invitation. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. "Early," he murmured. I crossed the room, opened the door, and met a man who could have been born inside a filing cabinet. Thin, pale, his suit pressed within an inch of its life. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "Depends who's asking." "John Rennick, attorney for Mr. Khan." He held out a leather folio. "My client asked me to deliver this before your meeting tonight." I took it. He didn't mention a lawyer. He barely mentioned himself. Rennick's expression didn't shift. "Mr. Khan believes in documentation, not conversation." He hesitated, then added, "If he fails to arrive, you're to open that envelope." I looked at the folio, sealed, thick, and marked with the kind of handwriting that doesn't tremble unless it's signing a will. "Fails to arrive," I repeated. "Meaning dead?" Rennick gave a dry smile. "Meaning absent." He turned and left before I could pin him down. Wolfe watched from his chair, eyes narrowed. "He said absent," he mused. "A delicate euphemism." I placed the envelope on his desk. "Do I lock it in the safe or under your dinner plate?" He ignored that. "Mr. Goodwin, you will remain accessible until midnight. Should Mr. Khan appear, alive or otherwise, he is to be received." I dislike mysteries that begin without witnesses. I said, "You're expecting trouble." "I'm expecting fulfillment," he replied. When a man schedules his own demise, one must admire his punctuality. The office fell quiet again, except for the faint hiss of Fritz in the kitchen and the soft tick of the clock measuring out the hours to midnight. Wolfe reached for the envelope but didn't open it. "Archie," he said without looking up, "bring me beer. We may as well be civil while waiting for death to keep its appointment." I poured the beer, and the hiss from the bottle's lip sounded louder than it should have. Wolfe took it without thanks, which was his way of saying, I'd done it right. He leaned back, eyes on the envelope, like it might open itself out of guilt. The label on the front had no return address, just Wolfe's name in that thin, deliberate hand. I'd seen too many envelopes like it. Most of them ended up in police evidence bags. "You going to let curiosity starve till midnight?" I asked. "No," he said. "I'm going to let decency digest first." He gestured with the glass. "A man asks that his secrets wait until he is either here or not. We shall oblige him." "Decency," I said, "isn't a word most clients pay extra for." "Then we shall invoice it separately." He shut his eyes and went still, which meant his brain was filing the room under temporary storage. I went to the window because silence in that office could get heavy enough to trip over. The street below was quiet, but not calm, quiet like a cat about to move. At 11:10, Saul called. "Got something on your phantom," he said. "Edwin Kahn, 54, Vice President at Metro Federal Trust. Married once, divorced neatly. No priors, no scandal in print, but—" "There's always a but," I said. "He was questioned 3 years ago in a missing securities case. Never charged. A file clerk took the hit and vanished. Kahn walked clean. That's our boy." "One more thing," Saul added. "His bank put out a quiet internal memo this morning. Account freeze order. Something about irregular transfers overnight. If I were guessing, I'd say somebody caught him moving a big chunk of cash into a private holding." "Enough to buy a murder?" "Or enough to make one look like charity," Saul said. "You want me to dig into the ex-wife?" "Not yet. Stick with the bank trail." I hung up. Wolfe's eyes were open again, fixed on me like I'd just proven his pessimism correct. "Funds frozen?" he asked. "Completely. Metro Federal's accountants are sharpening knives." He nodded slowly. "Then Mr. Kahn's appointment was not metaphorical. He has arranged his own execution, either financial or mortal. That envelope's looking heavier by the minute." "It is," he said. "Bring it here." He didn't open it, just turned it over in his hands, feeling for the weight, the balance. Paper, photographs, perhaps a key. "Mr. Kahn wishes me to complete something on his behalf should he fail to appear. I dislike posthumous delegation. You'd prefer the client vertical. I prefer the client useful." He set it down again. The clock on the wall chimed 11:30. Fritz appeared briefly, asked if we'd require anything before midnight, got a glare that sent him back to the kitchen. "Archie," Wolfe said, "remind me, what day is it?" "Tuesday." "Unfortunate. Tuesdays are seldom auspicious." The phone rang again, quick, sharp. I caught it before the second bell. "Goodwin." A woman's voice this time. Low, steady, too composed to be comfortable. "Mr. Goodwin, this is Marion Kahn." I straightened. "Wife or widow?" "Wife," she said after a breath. "For the moment. My husband called me earlier this evening. He said he'd done something terrible. He was frightened. Then he said he was coming to see your employer. I haven't heard from him since." Wolfe was already holding out a hand for the receiver. I passed it. "This is Nero Wolfe," he said. "You say your husband expressed remorse. For what act?" "I don't know," she said. "He mentioned a man named Glade. He said something about betrayal and—" Her voice cracked, barely audible. "He asked me not to go to the police until morning. I don't know why." Wolfe's tone went surgical. "Madame, where is your husband's place of employment?" Metro Federal Trust, downtown. And his residence, East 63rd. But he won't be there. He hates that apartment. Understandable, Wolfe said. Thank you for your candor. I suggest you remain home and reachable. I will contact you if your husband keeps his appointment or fails it conclusively. He replaced the receiver and stared at the air for a full 10 seconds. Then, Archie, we are now committed. To what? To interruption, he said. If Karn dies, it will be tonight. If he lives, it will be by our interference. Either outcome offends me. I said, then let's offend somebody else first. Wolfe looked at the envelope again, sighed once, and tore it open. Inside was a folded letter, a smaller sealed note, and a single brass key stamped B23. I handed him the paper. He read aloud, Mr. Wolfe, if I am not alive to attend our appointment, you will find the reason at locker B23 Central Terminal. Inside is what remains of my conscience. It must not reach the wrong hands. I have no one left I trust but you. He stopped there. Conscience, he said softly. An unwise thing to keep in storage. I said, you want me to go get it? Immediately. Take the Packard. Do not alert the police. Retrieve the contents and return within the hour. Midnight Express, I said. Got it. He waved me off. And Archie, be careful. Men who announce their own deaths tend to attract spectators. Outside, the air had that metallic chill the city keeps in reserve for nights when something's about to happen. I drove fast, lights slicing through the empty streets. Grand Central was half asleep, the kind of sleep that twitches. The night clerk barely looked up as I passed. Locker B23 was on the lower level, 3rd row. The key slid in smooth, too smooth. Inside was a small metal box, unmarked, light enough to lift with one hand. No wires, no smell, no ticking. That was something. I closed the door behind me and started back toward the exit. That's when I saw him, tall, overcoat, hat pulled low, standing by the pillar pretending to read a schedule that hadn't changed in 10 years. When I turned toward the concourse, he turned too. I stopped. He didn't. I shifted the box under my arm and moved faster. His shoes echoed mine. A second heartbeat behind me. The sound tightened the air between us until I could taste metal. I hit the stairwell, took the steps 2 at a time, came out into the main hall. The man was closer now, hand under his coat. I ducked behind a column, waited till he passed, and swung once, hard. He hit the floor, hat spinning away. The gun slid out, small and expensive. I kicked it clear and bent down. The face staring up was unfamiliar, but the lapel pin wasn't. Metro Federal's crest, gold and blue. I grabbed the gun, the pin, and the box, then ran for the exit. Behind me, the man groaned once, tried to move, and didn't. When I hit the Packard, I was breathing like I'd sprinted through a novel. The drive back to the brownstone was a blur of lights and horns. Wolfe was standing at the door when I pulled up, which told me he'd been listening for the car. He opened it himself, something he never does. You have it. I handed him the box. And a souvenir, I said, tossing him the lapel pin. Your client's banker sent his regards. He nodded slowly, almost respectfully. Then it begins, he said. Bring the box inside. The appointment, Mr. Goodwin, has arrived early. Wolfe took the metal box like it was evidence against gravity. He didn't open it right away. Instead, he pressed a thumb along its seam and gave a quiet grunt that meant both satisfaction and irritation. I shut the office door behind me, locked it, and dropped into the red chair. You get the feeling, I said, that I'm the only guy in New York who still checks luggage for corpses. Unlikely, Wolfe murmured, but perhaps the only one employed to return them. He placed the box on the desk and examined the latch. No lock. Just a small brass catch that looked innocent enough to have opinions. He flipped it open, paused, and lifted the lid. Inside was a bundle of documents bound with twine and a folded envelope on top, the paper tinted grey, like the skin of an old secret. Wolfe's eyebrows twitched upward. Ah, prudence bound by guilt. I leaned forward. Readable guilt? He handed me the envelope. Open it. I dislike touching sentiment. The handwriting inside matched the earlier note. Carnes. If you're reading this, I am dead or worse. The papers enclosed concerned the Viridian Trust, a fund established through Metro Federal. I discovered discrepancies amounting to $500,000 siphoned through dormant subsidiaries. The trail leads to my own signature. Someone has used my authority to kill me twice, once financially, once literally. If you can prove what I could not, perhaps my name will outlive the scandal. $500,000, I said. That's a lot of scandal. Indeed, Wolfe said. Enough to sustain multiple murders. He untied the bundle. Inside were photocopies of bank transfers, internal memos, and one glossy photograph of a man in a Metro Federal lobby shaking hands with Khan. Wolfe studied it for a long moment, eyes narrowing. Identify the man, he said. I peered closer. The guy had the build of a cop and the haircut of an accountant. Seen him before, I said. That's Nathan Glade. He was Metro Federal's senior risk assessor, made headlines 2 years ago for busting a counterfeit securities ring. Yes, Wolfe said softly, and later left the bank, quietly. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Mr. Glade's profession, as I recall, is discovering invisible theft. It seems he has graduated to committing it. Or somebody's framing him, I said. Possibly. But Kern's mention of my own signature suggests forgery facilitated by internal access. Mr. Glade had both opportunity and intellect. What he lacked, perhaps, was motive, unless we find that Kern threatened exposure. I said, maybe that's what tonight was about. He came clean, and someone decided to balance the books permanently. The clock struck midnight. Clean, deep, final. We both looked up, listening. The phone rang once, sharp and solitary. Wolfe's hand froze mid-air. I picked it up. Goodwin. Static first, then a man's voice, breathless, low, urgent. Tell Wolfe, he was right. Who is this? No answer. Just the faint echo of something metallic, then the sound of a car engine revving and a crack that wasn't thunder. The line went dead. I looked at Wolfe. Sounded like a gunshot. He didn't move. Describe the background noise. Traffic, then echo. Could be underpass or parking structure. Central, Wolfe said instantly. Mr. Karn's habit of punctuality extended to geography. Retrieve your coat. Again? Again, he said, already reaching for the phone. And this time, bring gloves. I left without comment. The city felt different. Edges sharper, colors flatter. I drove toward Grand Central, heart doing double time with the engine. The concourse light still burned, but the lower level was cordoned off by 2 patrol cars. I parked at the curb and walked in slow, keeping my hands visible. A uniform stopped me halfway down the steps. No civilians. I flashed my license. Nero Wolfe's office. One of yours called about a shooting. He frowned. You're late. Victim's already gone. Dead. Gone, he said again, jerking his head toward the shadows. Cops found a pool of blood near the lockers. No body. Only thing left behind was this. He held up a small black wallet bagged in cellophane. Inside was an ID card. Edwin Kahn, Metro Federal Trust. I swallowed once. Any witnesses? One janitor says he saw 2 men arguing near the stairwell. Heard a shot, then both gone. Which way? He pointed toward the east exit, the same one I'd used an hour earlier. I thanked him, left, and called Wolfe from the nearest payphone. He answered on the first ring. Report. Karn's ID found at the station. Blood but no body. Witness says 2 men, One shot fired. Predictable, Wolfe said. Bring the wallet here immediately. And Archie, avoid the police until you've done so. Too late. They're already curious. Then satisfy them superficially, as you do with most people. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was where I'd left him, except the documents were spread like a map of deceit. He glanced at the wallet, then at me. Blood. Enough to paint a small confession booth. He picked up a sheet from the pile. Observe this memo, signed by Khan, authorizing transfer of funds to Viridian Holdings. Note the signature's pressure. I leaned in. Looks normal. Until you compare it with his letter. He held them side by side. The loops differ, but more importantly, the pen weight shifts. This is traced, forged. So Glade forged Khan's name, or compelled him to sign, under duress, but I suspect forgery. Khan realized too late and attempted to undo it by confession. I said, then the shooting finishes the cleanup. Precisely. He folded the papers and sat back, eyes half closed. Tomorrow we will invite Mr. Glade here. He will not come willingly, which is why you will ask under pretense of discretion. Tell him Khan's death has created complications best resolved privately. Want me to use flattery or threat? Use appetite. He will prefer discretion to scandal. He leaned forward again, voice low. Archie, you saw a man at the terminal. Describe him again. Metro Federal lapel pin, dark overcoat, about 6 feet. Didn't see his face long enough to swear to it. Still, Wolfe said, you may identify him when he returns to claim his error. Returns where? He looked toward the desk where the metal box still sat open. Here, he said, because he knows I have what he lost, and men who steal conscience are greedy for retrieval. I started to answer, but the sound cut through us. A soft tap at the door, hesitant, deliberate. Wolfe didn't move, just murmured, punctuality again. I went to the door, hand near my gun. The hall was empty, except for an envelope resting on the threshold. No footsteps, no voice, just the faint echo of the city's breath outside. I picked it up, closed the door, and handed it to Wolfe. He studied the handwriting, different this time, angular, efficient. He opened it with a letter knife. Inside was a single typed line. You are warned not to open the box. Now the ledger opens you. Wolfe looked up, expression unreadable. Mr. Goodwin, he said quietly, we have graduated from prophecy to performance. Someone has begun to tidy the stage. The air in the office was so still I could hear the clock digesting each second. Wolfe held the anonymous note between 2 fingers, like it smelled of bad intentions. He reread the line twice, then set it beside the open box, as if it were a new species of insect. Someone is watching, I said. Observing, Wolfe corrected. A watcher implies patience. This suggests intrusion, meaning whoever dropped that envelope knows the box is open. He gave me one of those glances that register irritation as education, meaning, Archie, that he or she anticipated our curiosity. An enemy confident enough to provoke me directly is either a fool or familiar. Then my money's on familiar, I said. Fools don't use typewriters with professional ribbons. Wolfe ignored the humor. He closed the metal box, snapped the latch, and pushed it an inch toward me. Lock that in the safe. Whoever left this will not stop at warnings. I carried it across the room, knelt, and spun the dial. Behind me, the phone began to ring again, sharp and impatient. Wolfe's eyes flicked up. Answer, please, carefully. I picked it up. Goodwin. The voice was the same woman, as before. Marion Khan. But the composure was gone. Mr. Goodwin, they found him. They found my husband. Her breath was shallow, words tumbling. The police called me. Said they found a man shot in a parked car near the river. His wallet, his watch. They said it was Edwin. I looked at Wolfe. His eyes had gone half-lidded, the way they do when he's measuring something that doesn't fit a theorem. "Where?" he asked quietly. She must have heard him through the receiver. "Pier 41. They said he'd been dead for hours." "Hours?" Wolfe repeated, almost to himself. "Impossible." I lowered the phone, covered the mouthpiece. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "Doubtful," he said. "You are thinking chronologically. I'm thinking anatomically. The timing contradicts both physics and deceit. If Karn was dead for hours, he could not have telephoned us minutes ago." "He had a good impersonator," I said. "Or," Wolfe murmured, "a message delayed by design." He took the phone, soothed Mrs. Karn in a tone so steady it could have cured vertigo, promised to visit her in the morning, which meant, of course, he wouldn't, and ended the call. Then he reached for his beer and didn't drink it. "Archie, notify Inspector Cramer," he said. "Inform him that Mr. Karn's body is of interest to me. He will object. Allow him the pleasure. Then persuade him." I called Cramer. His voice came through like gravel in a tumbler. "What now, Goodwin? Wolfe lose another orchid?" "Karn," I said. "Metro Federal. He's yours at Pier 41. Wolfe wants a look at the body before you refrigerate him." Cramer grunted. "Wolfe wants? Wolfe wants. He can file a request like anyone else." "You'll want him there," I said. "There's something about the timeline you'll trip over if he isn't." A pause. Then, "Fine. Bring him. But if he starts lecturing my men about logic, I'll drown him myself." I hung up. Wolfe sighed as if granting Cramer permission to breathe was beneath him. "Fetch the coat. Fritz can sit up with the house." He hated leaving the brownstone after dark, but curiosity was a drug that dissolved his dignity faster than alcohol. He moved slower than most men think, but with Wolfe it was momentum, not pace. By the time we reached the car, the city had shrunk into its nocturnal skeleton. Wet streets, sodium halos, everything too awake for honesty. At Pier 41, the police lights made the water glitter like bad jewelry. Cramer stood near a sedan with one door open and a sheet-covered shape inside. His cigar glowed red against the dark. "Well," he said, "the genius arrives." Wolfe didn't bother with an answer. He went straight to the car, bent as far as his waistline allowed, and lifted the sheet. The face underneath was Karn's, maybe. Pale, blood at the temple, eyes open, but Wolfe's frown deepened. He leaned closer, squinting, then straightened with a groan. "Inspector," he said, "has this body been identified by anyone who knew Mr. Karn personally?" "His wife's on her way," Cramer said. "You saying it's not him?" "I am saying," Wolfe replied, "that it might be him, but this man's right hand tells another story." He pointed. The nails were too clean, the knuckles smooth. Our Mr. Karn was a penman, not a craftsman, but his callus was on the middle finger of his right hand. This one has none. "So a look-alike," I said. "A decoy," Wolfe corrected. "Perhaps a deliberate one." Cramer swore softly. "You think your guy faked his own death?" "Not my guy," Wolfe said. "Merely a man punctual to deception." He turned away from the car. "Archie, we must return. If this corpse was meant to confirm a narrative, the author will now seek reviews." Back in the Packard, Wolfe didn't speak until we were half a block from the river. Then, "You recall the photograph? Karn shaking hands with Glade?" "Sure. That handshake was a signature. I've seen Glade's posture before. Published photographs. His thumb angles downward, dominant. Karn's expression in that image is not cordial, it is captive. I believe that meeting recorded coercion, not camaraderie." "You think Glade killed him?" "I think Glade arranged the conditions for death," Wolfe said. "Whether Karn participates willingly or not remains to be seen." He went quiet again, but not empty. You could feel him thinking, the way you feel thunder thinking about lightning. When we reached the brownstone, the front door was ajar. I drew my gun, stepped in first. The hallway was dark except for a line of light leaking from the office. Wolfe gestured once. "Proceed." I pushed the door open. The smell hit first. Cologne and burnt paper. The safe stood open, its contents intact except for the metal box, which was gone. "Somebody beat us home," I said. "Not somebody," Wolfe muttered. "Glade, only he would know what to retrieve." I pointed at the floor. A single white card lay there, face up. It read, "Debts closed at midnight." Wolfe stared at it, then at me. "He's not done," he said quietly. "He's only collecting." The card's edge caught the lamplight like a blade. I crouched, slid it into an envelope and said, "You want this dusted?" "Pointless," Wolfe said. He wore gloves. "He also has initiative. That combination is offensive." "Offensive enough to rob you?" "Enough to presume he understands me." Wolfe went to the globe, twisted it open and poured himself 2 fingers of brandy with the precision of an autopsy. He was here less than 10 minutes. No forced entry. The safe opened without complaint. Therefore, he knew the combination. Which narrows it to you, me, or a ghost with your handwriting? Not quite. The lock's tumblers bear fresh oil. He used a skeleton key, professional grade. He sipped, grimaced faintly. "Glade is not merely a thief. He's announcing competence." I said, "Well, he's got the box. Want me to call Cramer?" "Not yet. Cramer's idea of subtlety involves 3 uniforms and a megaphone. I prefer to invite Mr. Glade to condemn himself privately." He crossed to the phone and dialed a number from memory. "Saul Panzer," he said when the voice answered. "Yes, I assume you're awake." "Good. I require surveillance. One Nathan Glade, formerly of Metro Federal Trust. Address, unknown. Begin at the bank and move outward. You will find him by his anxiety." He hung up, turned to me. "We wait." "Waiting's your department," I said. "Mine's legwork." "Yours," he said, "is breathing until I decide otherwise." He lowered himself into the chair with the grace of an avalanche and closed his eyes. The silence built its own furniture. Then, faintly, a sound broke through, tires stopping at the curb. Not a cab, engine too smooth, too deliberate. I went to the window. A black sedan sat across the street, lights off, one silhouette inside. No movement. "He's watching," I said. "Then give him something to observe." Wolfe nodded toward the phone. "Call Cramer now. Tell him that the man responsible for Karn's death is preparing his exit from New York. Use that phrasing. Cramer will bring chaos, and chaos will flush competence." I did as told. Cramer growled. "You sure you're not feeding me fairy tales again, Goodwin? Come see for yourself. Wolfe's got a gift-wrapped lead for you." 10 minutes later, red light bled through the curtains. The sedan across the street started, but 2 cruisers boxed it before it reached the corner. I watched through the glass as a man stepped out, tall, overcoat collar up. Cramer's voice barked through the night, and 2 uniforms closed in. Wolfe's mouth curved. Not a smile, just a small movement of satisfaction. He was too confident. It will be instructive to see how long that lasts. We waited another 5 minutes before the knock came. Cramer didn't waste time on greetings. He stormed in, hat tilted back, cigar clamped tight. "You set me up for a stakeout without warning, and now I've got a man in custody who says he's Nathan Glade. He also says he came here to speak with you, not to get tailed." "Did he resist?" Wolfe asked. "Only verbally. I like him already." "Then bring him in." Cramer frowned. "You want him here?" "Now?" "Yes," Wolfe said simply. "He will talk best in a chair designed for discomfort." Cramer grunted, motioned to the door. 2 officers escorted Glade inside. He was cleaner than any banker had a right to be. Expensive suit, eyes like slate, expression rehearsed. He saw Wolfe and inclined his head slightly. "Mr. Wolfe," he said, "I would have preferred to make an appointment." "You did," Wolfe replied. At midnight, you were punctual. Glade's smile didn't reach his eyes. You have something that belongs to me. The box, Wolfe said. Indeed, you reclaimed it admirably, but your method was inelegant. Cramer jabbed his cigar toward Glade. We can talk about boxes downtown. I suggest you refrain, Wolfe told him. You will learn more here. Cramer growled but stayed. Glade leaned forward slightly. Mr. Khan's affair has become a hazard. He was unstable. His death, regrettable though it is, will prevent further scandal. Regrettable, I said. That's one word for murder. He looked at me coolly. Mr. Goodwin, you misunderstand. I didn't kill Khan. He killed himself. Wolfe's eyelids twitched. Explain. He called me this evening, Glade said evenly. He discovered certain irregularities in the Viridian Trust. He demanded I confess to the board. I refused. He threatened exposure. I went to reason with him, but he was already armed. He turned the gun on himself. Cramer snorted. And you didn't think to call the cops? Glade's voice didn't rise. Would you? I've seen what scandal does to institutions. I cleaned the scene, removed the documents he meant to use against me, including the box. Wolfe's tone stayed measured, and then delivered a corpse under a false name to mislead identification. Glade's mask cracked a little. I didn't arrange that. Ah, Wolfe murmured. Then someone is tidying after you? How convenient. Glade hesitated, realizing too late that denial had already mapped his guilt. Wolfe watched him like a spider deciding where to weave next. Inspector, Wolfe said, if you arrest this man now, you will lose him to lawyers by morning. If you release him, he will run to whoever staged Khan's body and expose himself completely. I suggest lenience disguised as confidence. Cramer glared. You're using me as bait. I'm using justice, Wolfe said, as gravity. Cramer chewed his cigar. You've got 12 hours, Wolfe. If he disappears, so do you. When the door closed behind them, I said, You sure letting him walk was smart? Absolutely not, Wolfe said. Which is why it will work. Mr. Glade's instinct will drive him to the architect of his ruin. He will either lead us to the missing $500,000 or to his own demise. Either result is information. He leaned back, closed his eyes again, and folded his hands over his stomach. Archie, call Saul. Tell him our quarry has re-entered the field. Follow discreetly, and take a weapon. Men like Glade travel armed with regret. I went to the phone. What about you? I, he said, will await his confession by proxy. The telephone will ring when guilt decides to report in. I believed him. The night felt wound too tight to hold. As I called Saul, the city outside exhaled like something preparing to strike. The phone was still warm from Saul's line when Wolfe finally moved. He leaned forward, one finger tracing the edge of the desk like a compass measuring distance. Archie, he said, described the moment Glade realized I'd cornered him. He didn't blink, I said, but his jaw tightened like he was biting something expensive. Fear of loss, Wolfe murmured. Not fear of exposure. He believes he can survive scandal if he controls its direction. That means he is still ignorant of Khan's final card. Which is? The true author of the theft. Wolfe's eyes opened. Glade may have forged Khan's name, but someone forged Glade's future. We will find out who when he tries to reclaim it. The words hadn't cooled when the front doorbell rang, twice, quick and sharp. I looked at him. Expecting anyone? No, Wolfe said, and that's precisely why you should answer. I went down the hall, hand near the holster. The silhouette outside the glass was slim, uncertain. I opened the door halfway and saw Marion Khan, coat thrown over nightclothes, eyes rimmed red but still clear. Mrs. Khan, I said, this isn't a visiting hour. I couldn't stay home, she said, stepping past me before I could object. The police came again. They said my husband's body wasn't his. I need to know what's happening. Wolfe looked up as she entered. Madame, you are aware you have violated several social norms by visiting a bachelor's residence at such an hour. She didn't flinch. Social norms are for the living. That got Wolfe's eyebrow halfway to respect. Sit, he said. She sat, folded her gloves in her lap, and looked straight at him. You have the truth, don't you? I have fragments, he said. And a question. Did your husband ever mention a man named Glade outside professional context? She nodded slowly. Yes. Edwin said Glade was ambitious. He called him a climber, the sort who uses other men's shoulders as rungs. Did he fear him? Not at first. But these past weeks, he'd come home pale, distracted. Said there were forces in the bank that would destroy him if he spoke out. He wanted to go to the board, but thought they were compromised. I said, compromised how? She looked at me like I'd asked the weight of air. Money, of course. The fund, the Viridian Trust, wasn't real. It was a facade to funnel deposits into private accounts. Edwin found the paper trail, but it led through half the boardroom. Which makes Glade the errand boy, I said. Or the fall guy, Wolfe added. Mrs. Carn, your husband trusted no one by the end? He trusted you, she said quietly. Wolfe blinked. That was foolish. She reached into her purse, drew out a small slip of folded paper. This was mailed to me this morning. It has his handwriting. I took it, unfolded it carefully. The note read, Marion, if anything happens, tell Wolfe that what he seeks is not in the box, but behind the glass. Behind the glass, I said. What glass? She shook her head. I don't know. Wolfe's gaze had sharpened like a lens finding focus. May I see the envelope? She handed it over. He studied the postmark, dated yesterday afternoon. Mailed before his supposed death, he murmured. This confirms our chronology. Mr. Carn expected his end, but he did not plan it. Then who did? She asked. The man who ensures such endings remain profitable. He set the paper down. Madame, you are in danger. Whoever arranged your husband's death knows he left a message. That message now resides with you, and by extension me. She went pale. You mean they'll come for me? They already have, Wolfe said calmly. You're fortunate they preferred delay over haste. The doorbell rang again. 3 heavy knocks this time, not polite. I stood up fast. Wolfe didn't move. Stay where you are, I told her. This part of the night isn't for visitors. I went to the door, gun drawn. Who's there? Cramer, the voice barked. Open up, Goodwin, before I kick it in. I holstered the gun, opened the door. Cramer pushed through, rain on his coat, cigar dead in his teeth. You two attract corpses like moths. You know what we found? Enlighten us, Wolfe said dryly. A body in a warehouse uptown, shot once in the chest. No ID, but there's a bank badge in the pocket. Nathan Glade. That stopped even Wolfe for a breath. Glade? Unless there's another one running around with a hole the size of a silver dollar. I said, that's convenient. Too convenient. Cramer grunted. We checked the scene. No wallet, no weapon. Whoever did it knew what they wanted. Wolfe, I'm warning you, if this ties back to your client, you'd better come clean. Wolfe waved a hand. Inspector, I would never withhold clarity. It spares me from repetition. But if your corpse is indeed Glade, then we must ask, who benefits from removing him now? Cramer jabbed the air with his cigar stub. I'm asking you. Wolfe ignored him. Archie, the phrase, behind the glass. Does it suggest anything to you? Plenty of things. Mirrors, showcases, greenhouses, bank teller windows. Take your pick. Precisely, Wolfe said. A phrase designed for multiplicity, meant to hide meaning in abundance. It could only refer to something both literal and familiar to Carn. Where, Mrs. Khan, did your husband spend most of his time when not at home? The bank, she said. He worked long hours, sometimes stayed late in the executive wing. His office overlooked the trading floor. Glass walls? Yes, she said slowly. Frosted with a display case behind his desk. He kept awards there. Citations? Photographs? Wolfe's eyes gleamed. Archie, tomorrow you will visit Metro Federal under the pretense of returning Mr. Khan's personal effects. Observe that case carefully. If it is untouched, we may find what Glade died trying to retrieve. Cramer folded his arms. You're assuming the bank's not already cleaned it out. I'm assuming, Wolfe said, that greed makes men sloppy. Whoever orchestrated this will not expect a detective in daylight. They will still be arranging alibis in the dark. Cramer exhaled smoke. I'll station a man there anyway. Do so, Wolfe said, but ensure he is ignorant of our intention. The fewer who know where the glass is, the safer we remain. Mrs. Khan stood. What should I do? Go home, Wolfe said. Lock your doors. Speak to no one. If anyone asks, say your husband's death has left you inconsolable and confused. Few people will doubt that, and it buys us hours. She nodded, then paused at the door. Mr. Wolfe, will this ever end? It will, he said, but not neatly. When she was gone, Cramer muttered something about ghosts and left too. I shut the door behind him, turned to Wolfe. You think the thing behind the glass is in Khan's office? I think, Wolfe said, that what's behind the glass will show us who still needs it hidden, and that man will arrive before we do. He reached for the brandy again, poured just enough to stain the glass, and said without looking up, Archie, get some sleep. You'll need a fresh conscience for trespassing. Wolfe's warning about conscience and trespassing was still echoing in my head when I left the brownstone at dawn. The city wasn't awake yet, but it was already thinking about sinning again. I parked across from Metro Federal Trust, the kind of glass and marble temple that worships money but hires guards to protect the altar. Inside, the place smelled of polish and quiet arrogance. The lobby guard gave me the once-over. I flashed Wolfe's card and said, Private agent, here to collect personal effects of the late Mr. Khan. His widow authorized it. The guard, not being paid enough to argue with handwriting on letterhead, waved me toward the executive elevators. I rode up to the third floor, carpet thicker than Fritz's patience, lights soft enough to flatter embezzlement. Khan's office was behind frosted glass, etched with his name. The door was unlocked. That wasn't sloppy. It was scared. The room looked like someone had cleaned it with nerves instead of polish. Papers squared, desk bare, but the faint smell of smoke still clung near the wastebasket. I checked, ashes and a curl of burned photo paper. Behind the desk, just where Marion had said, stood the glass display case. It held awards, framed certificates, a photo of Khan shaking hands with a governor, and one small brass trophy cup. Nothing unusual, except for a hairline crack running across the back panel. I circled it, tapped the glass lightly. It gave a duller sound in one spot, lower, right corner. Hollow space behind it. Wolfe's behind the glass suddenly had a heartbeat. I eased my knife from my pocket and slid the tip along the frame. The glass panel shifted just enough for a glimpse. A small metal envelope taped to the inside. I pried it loose, careful not to leave fingerprints. Inside was a single strip of microfilm, no larger than a cigarette. The door latch clicked behind me. I turned, hand halfway to my gun, and froze. A man in a dark suit stood there, holding a handkerchief. He wasn't pointing a weapon, yet, but his shoulders were too relaxed for an accountant. "Good morning," he said. "Mr. Goodwin, isn't it? I was told you'd come." "Then your informant's punctual. I like punctual people. Who are you?" "Philip Darnell, internal counsel. The bank prefers to manage its own embarrassments." "Sure," I said. That's why you're here, to keep them from leaving the building. His eyes flicked to the microfilm in my hand. That's confidential property. Of a dead man, I said. He smiled thinly. All property is transferable, even conscience. I'll take that. I was about to tell him where he could file that request when the elevator bell dinged down the hall. Darnell's expression shifted, irritation and calculation at once. He moved faster than I expected, reaching for my wrist. I twisted sideways, shoved him off balance, and the microfilm went sliding across the polished floor. He dove for it. I kicked the base of the trophy case, sending glass scattering across the carpet. That froze him long enough for me to pull my gun. "Stand up, Esquire," I said. "You've got glass in your shoes and guilt on your face." The footsteps in the hallway came closer, heels sharp, confident. Marion Carn appeared in the doorway, eyes wide but steady. "Mrs. Carn," I said, "you're early for the viewing." She didn't answer me. Her gaze was on Darnell. "Philip," she said softly, "you told me Edwin was safe." He went still, hand halfway raised. "Marion, you shouldn't be here. You don't understand." "Oh, I do," she said. "You said Edwin was the one stealing. You said you'd protect us if he kept quiet." "I did protect you," Darnell said quickly. "Glade was going to expose everything. I only wanted to—" "Save yourself." Wolfe's voice cut through from the hallway. He filled the doorway like a verdict, leaning slightly on his cane. "Your lexicon is deficient, Mr. Darnell. Self-preservation requires less eloquence and more honesty." Darnell's color drained. "You, how?" "By cab," Wolfe said, "and by arithmetic. Mr. Goodwin's efficiency required supervision." I kept the gun steady. "He was about to reclaim the evidence, boss. Want to finish the transaction?" Wolfe crossed the room, took the microfilm from the floor with a handkerchief, and slipped it into his vest pocket. "Thank you. That object represents the true Viridian Trust. Names, dates, signatures, enough to dismantle an institution." Darnell's voice cracked. "You can't prove anything." "Proof," Wolfe said, "is merely logic that has found a witness. You have kindly volunteered." Marion's eyes glistened. Not tears, just exhaustion with clarity. "Philip, did you kill my husband?" His silence was answer enough. Wolfe didn't raise his voice. "You forged Carn's signature to launder funds through Viridian Holdings. When he discovered it, you enlisted Glade to manage the paperwork, promising him immunity. When Carn threatened exposure, you arranged his disappearance. When Glade realized the scheme was collapsing, you silenced him as well. You are a man who murders not for survival, but for symmetry." Darnell looked ready to lunge, but Wolfe merely tilted his head toward me. "Archie." I stepped forward, gun still level. "Don't. The next sound you make will be the one Cramer files under resisting arrest." Darnell's shoulders slumped. The performance was over. Wolfe turned to Marion. "Madam, I regret your part in this tragedy, though it was incidental. You have been used twice, first as assurance, then as witness." She closed her eyes. "I just wanted him to stop being afraid." Wolfe's tone softened by an inch. "He stopped fearing long before he died. He left you the one thing these men could never counterfeit, truth written in his own hand." Cramer's voice boomed from the corridor before I could reply. "Goodwin, Wolfe, you two better not have redecorated another office." I called back. "We left the paperwork intact. Bring your pen." When Cramer entered, saw the gun, the lawyer, and the broken glass, he didn't even swear, just sighed. "Every time, Wolfe. Every damn time." Wolfe handed him the microfilm, neatly wrapped. "There's your case, Inspector. I recommend an early press release. It will please the board." Cramer squinted. "You always hand me the murderers like they're library books." "Better," Wolfe said. "Mine are indexed." As they led Darnell away, Wolfe adjusted his tie, turned to me, and said, "Mr. Goodwin, the day's exertion has compromised my appetite. I will require eggs, beer, and absolute silence for 2 hours. Sure, I said, pocketing my notepad. And after that? He looked out the window toward the city's reflection in the bank's glass facade. After that, he said, we shall consider the moral interest accruing on conscience. Wolfe's appetite might have been compromised, but mine wasn't. After watching Darnell carted off like a bad account ledger, I could have eaten the Metro Federal sign itself. We got back to the brownstone with the kind of silence that comes after a storm, heavy but not finished. Wolfe went straight for his chair, lowered himself into it like it owed him an apology, and reached for the brandy Fritz had placed on the side table. Mr. Goodwin, he said, what we have witnessed is not closure, but punctuation. The case is not yet grammatical. Meaning what? I asked. The killer's cuffed, the motives signed, and Cramer's probably on his third cigar of self-satisfaction. He shook his head. Murder rarely ends with the first confession. It merely changes authorship. I hung my hat and leaned against the wall. Well, I hope the sequel's short. You said Carnes' death was arranged. If Darnell's our arranger, who's left? Who indeed? Wolfe murmured. He swirled his glass, watching the amber curl like thought. The Viridian Trust's funds passed through several accounts before vanishing. Darnell orchestrated the scheme, yes, but he was no financier. He required access beyond his reach. Someone higher. I frowned. The board. Possibly, he said. But corruption loves disguise. There will be one man, respectable, entrenched, the kind who uses villains as punctuation marks. The phone interrupted his theory. I picked it up. Saul's voice came through, quiet but quick. Archie, just got word from one of my tails. There's movement at the Carn apartment. 2 men in suits went in, one carrying a briefcase, no police markings. They're still inside. Friends of the late Mr. Carn. Friends don't pick locks, Saul said. Want me to go in? Hold back, I said. I'll call you. I hung up and turned to Wolfe. Somebody's cleaning up what's left of Carn's life. Wolfe grimaced. Retrieve Mrs. Carn before she becomes another deletion. That got me moving fast. The drive uptown was a blur of red lights and muttered curses. When I reached the Carn apartment building, the night door man was half asleep and no help. I took the stairs 2 at a time, gun ready. The door to the apartment was ajar, just enough to whisper trouble. Inside, the living room lights were on, the air too still, furniture undisturbed. Then a sound, a soft scrape of shoe leather behind the bedroom door. I eased forward, nudged it open. Marion Carn stood beside the dresser, facing 2 men in suits. One of them had a briefcase open on the bed. The other had a hand inside his jacket. They both turned when they saw me. Evening, gentlemen, I said. If this is a moving day, you forgot the truck. The one with the gun moved first. I dropped. Fired once. The shot tore through the lamp beside him, glass exploding. He cursed, staggered back, gun skidding across the floor. Marion screamed. I grabbed the nearest heavy object, a brass candlestick, and introduced it to the other man's skull. He folded neatly. The one with the briefcase wasn't unconscious yet, but he was reconsidering ambition. I yanked him upright. Who sent you? He groaned. Mr. Darnell. Try again. Darnell's in custody. That froze him. Then he stopped, eyes darting to the window. Then you'll all be dead soon enough. I didn't wait for immediately, Wolfe said. First, we will identify him beyond his voice. Then we will deliver more than a ledger. I said, a trap. An invitation, Wolfe corrected. One he will be unable to refuse. The ledger lay between us, pages fluttering slightly in the draft from the open window, as if the names themselves were restless. Wolfe stared at it for a moment, then said, Archie, fetch the black case. We are going hunting, though we shall remain seated. Wolfe's black case came out from under the desk like a magician's coffin. Smooth leather, brass corners polished enough to shame honesty. He set it on the blotter, flipped the clasps, and opened it with ceremony. Inside were his usual tools of persuasion: letterhead, envelopes, seals, and a small portable tape recorder that had been rewired twice by a man who owed Wolfe both his freedom and his silence. He gestured for me to sit. "Mr. Goodwin, our adversary has identified himself through arrogance. He telephones instead of hiding, presuming that fear will dictate my compliance. We shall convert that presumption into his confession." "I'll try to keep up," I said. "You planning to record him bragging or just bore him until he incriminates himself?" He gave me a look that could have iced champagne. "Neither. We will provoke him to act prematurely, forcing him to reveal where he hides his leverage. The ledger alone is not power. It's what it implies he fears losing." He leaned forward. "Archie, type a brief notice. 1 paragraph. Headline it for internal circulation. Viridian Trust documents secured by private investigator, evidence to be released to federal authorities. Make sure it sounds as though you've already mailed copies to Washington." "Fake press leak," I said. "Simple enough." "Accuracy is preferable," Wolfe said. "But implication will suffice." I typed it out, short and crisp. Wolfe signed it with his heavy black pen, then nodded toward the phone. "Deliver this to our caller's conscience." "You want me to call him?" He inclined his head. "You have a more forgiving voice than mine. He'll assume you're the negotiator." The line from earlier wasn't difficult to trace. Wolfe's equipment saw to that. I dialed the number and waited. It rang 3 times before a voice answered, calm as before. "Mr. Goodwin, I assume this isn't social." "Depends," I said. "We're issuing a statement about the Viridian Trust. Thought you might like a courtesy call before the government starts reading your bedtime stories." Silence, then a quiet chuckle. "That would be unwise. You're meddling in affairs you don't comprehend." "Oh, I comprehend fine," I said. "You've been laundering influence through a dead man's name. Now that ledger's making you sweat ink." "You're confident," he said, for a man standing in the middle of a firing range. "I'm quick," I said. "That evens things out." The line clicked dead. Wolfe, who'd been listening through the extension, said, "He will act within the hour. Bravado of that temperature never cools. Lock the door and bring the ledger here." Fritz appeared with a tray. Coffee for me, beer for Wolfe. Though neither of us touched them, the office felt smaller, like the walls had decided to eavesdrop. 10 minutes later, headlights swept across the front windows, paused, then went dark. Wolfe didn't move. "2 men," I said quietly. "Front walkway. They're coming straight to the door." He nodded once. "Answer it. Make no resistance. They will insist on privacy. Give it to them, then remain in motion." I unlatched the door. The first man pushed through without introduction. Tall, coat too well tailored for hired muscle. The second stayed by the door, hand in his pocket where the gun lived. "Mr. Wolfe," the tall one said, "our employer appreciates your cooperation. The ledger, please." Wolfe's tone was polite enough to offend. "Your employer's appreciation is premature. You are trespassing, armed and imbecilic. All 3 will cost him extra." The tall man's jaw flexed. "Don't make this difficult. We don't want noise." "Then you should have stayed home," I said. The second man took 1 step forward, the kind that comes before a bullet. Wolfe's voice cut through the tension like a cleaver. "Enough. Archie, give them the parcel on the shelf. Top right." I knew better than to argue mid-act. The package looked identical to the ledger's wrapping. I handed it over. The tall one checked the seal, nodded to his partner. "Pleasure doing business," he said. Wolfe inclined his head. "You mistake me for someone accommodating. Your pleasure is premature." They backed toward the door, never turning their backs fully. When the latch clicked shut behind them, Wolfe exhaled softly. "Follow." I was halfway to the hall when the sound hit. An explosion, dull and short, like a firecracker swallowed by wool. Wolfe's eyes flicked up. "Car," he said. "Go." I hit the porch just as the black sedan across the street lit up in orange. The blast wasn't big, but it was enough to lift the hood and send smoke curling through the air. No one moved inside it. I ran toward it, gun out, but stopped when I saw what was left on the sidewalk, a briefcase identical to the one they'd carried out. Saul's car screeched up behind me. He jumped out, took one look, and said, "Wolfe predicted this." Down to the minute. Back inside, Wolfe hadn't shifted an inch, though the smell of smoke had followed me in. I set the recovered case on the desk. "The real ledger's still safe?" He tapped the drawer. "Of course. They detonated the decoy. Their employer prefers elimination over recovery, a sign of desperation." Saul asked, "You get a look at the tall one?" "Enough to describe his watch," I said. "Gold Omega, engraved initials, AC." "Not helpful," Saul said. Wolfe's voice came from deep within thought. "It is. If one knows the board of Metro Federal, Arthur Claiborne, chairman, a man wealthy enough to buy murder, proud enough to sign it." "That's our voice on the phone," I said. "Claiborne's the top of the pyramid." Wolfe nodded once. "And the pyramid has begun to crack." He turned to Saul. "Inspector Cramer will want to arrest Mr. Claiborne immediately." "He must not. The man will have prepared alibis. We must compel him to prove guilt publicly, in his own arrogance." "How?" I asked. "By invitation," Wolfe said. "We shall inform Mr. Claiborne that the ledger he destroyed was genuine. He will come to correct the mistake. He will bring proof of his own authorship." I grinned. "You mean bait him with the truth disguised as another bluff?" "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Men who believe they own truth cannot resist reclaiming it." He leaned back, eyes closing, voice heavy with calculation. "Archie, send a note to Claiborne's office. Inform him that Nero Wolfe requests a private consultation tonight regarding the future of the Viridian Trust. He will arrive armed with vanity." I said, "And what do we arm ourselves with?" He opened one eye. "A recorder? And your capacity for provocation. Those, Mr. Goodwin, are always fatal to liars." Wolfe's idea of an invitation always carried the same fine print. Someone else picked up the danger tab. He dictated the letter with the calm of a man ordering dinner, his voice steady, syllables precise enough to slice through steel. When I'd finished typing, he read it twice, signed it with his full name in black ink, and handed it to me. "Deliver it in person," he said. "Claiborne's vanity will require the courtesy of a hand." "That vanity comes with hired teeth," I said. He gave a brief, patient grunt, then smiled back. Predators seldom expect their prey to grin. I tucked the letter inside my coat, holstered my gun, and stepped into the night. The city was nervous, the kind of nervous that gets into her shoes. Claiborne's residence sat on Park Avenue behind a wrought iron gate that said, "Money enters, conscience stays out." A butler with a haircut that had outlived 3 wars opened the door, saw the envelope, and frowned like I'd handed him a subpoena. "For Mr. Claiborne," I said. "Is it urgent?" "If it wasn't, I'd have mailed it," I said, and gave him the smile Wolfe had ordered. The door shut on me with the efficiency of an accountant closing a ledger. I counted to 5 and turned back toward the car. A man was leaning on it, a lean frame, trench coat, hat low. I recognized the posture before I saw the face. "Saul." "Wolfe sent you?" "Of course," he said. "He trusts your aim, but not your luck." "Smart of him," I said. "The old man's baiting a shark. He thinks Claiborne will bite." "He will," Saul said. "Men like Claiborne don't believe in predators. They think they are the predators." He wasn't wrong. By the time I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was in mid-strategy. The black recorder sat ready beside the telephone, its red light dull in the lamplight. "Claiborne will not call from his home," Wolfe said. "He'll use a private line. Secure, but not imaginative. His need for control will betray him. When he demands a meeting, he will choose a neutral location, believing he dictates the terms." I said, "And you'll let him believe it?" He nodded. "Belief is the strongest chain." At 9:30, the phone rang. Wolfe picked it up without hurry. I switched on the recorder. "Mr. Wolfe," Claiborne's voice said, smooth as lacquer. "I received your letter. You propose a consultation regarding Viridian. You understand discretion is essential." "Of course," Wolfe said. "Discretion is the luxury of the powerful. I merely rent it by the hour." A pause, then a chuckle. "Clever. Meet me at my office in the bank tower at 11. Bring the ledger. Alone." Wolfe's reply was as flat as a verdict. "Naturally." The line went dead. He turned to me. "Archie, you will accompany me despite his instructions. Claiborne will expect rebellion. It flatters him. Bring the recorder." "Just the recorder?" "And your judgment," he said. "One will protect me. The other will ensure the tape survives." At 11 sharp, the elevator doors opened into Claiborne's office, a suite of glass and arrogance. Claiborne stood behind his desk, silver hair precise, smile mechanical. 2 security men flanked the room, both with the eyes of men who measured threats in calibers. "Mr. Wolfe," Claiborne said. "Mr. Goodwin, you've come bearing scandal." Wolfe inclined his head. "I come bearing truth. Scandal arrives uninvited." Claiborne gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit. Let's settle this sensibly." "An excellent proposal," Wolfe said, lowering himself into the seat with deliberate care. "You wish to purchase silence." "Such a crude word," Claiborne said. "Let's call it an exchange of interests." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Your interest being survival. Mine, correctness." Claiborne smiled thinly. "How much correctness costs these days?" "Too much for your treasury," Wolfe said. "But I'm generous. You may purchase time instead by confessing voluntarily." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The guards stiffened. Claiborne's expression stayed fixed, but the smile froze around the edges. "Confess," he said softly. "To what?" "To constructing a fund that controlled appointments, policies, and prosecutions," Wolfe said. "To ordering the deaths of Edwin Kahn and Nathan Glade when they threatened exposure. To sending your men here tonight, and failing." I watched Claiborne's knuckles tighten. His hand drifted toward the drawer. I shifted my stance, ready, but Wolfe's voice didn't even rise. "Mr. Claiborne, that gesture would be terminally foolish. You are being recorded. Every word you have spoken since my arrival will serve as your epitaph or your trial." Claiborne's hand froze. Then, to my astonishment, he laughed, a single dry burst that carried no warmth. "You think that machine matters? You think anyone will hear it?" Wolfe didn't blink. "They already have." That was my cue. I reached under the table, pressed the transmitter switch hidden beneath the recorder. The live feed carried directly to Cramer's office 2 miles away. Claiborne stopped laughing. "You wouldn't dare." "Dare?" Wolfe said. "Mr. Claiborne, you mistake this for courage. It is merely precision." The office door burst open. Cramer filled the frame, cigar in one hand, warrant in the other. The guards reached for their weapons, but froze when 6 detectives poured in behind him. Cramer's voice was rough but satisfied. "Arthur Claiborne, you're under arrest for conspiracy, embezzlement, and 2 counts of murder. You have the right to shut up, though I'd prefer you didn't." Claiborne turned back toward Wolfe. "You set me up." "I invited you," Wolfe said. "You arrived fully equipped for self-destruction." The room filled with movement, Cops shouting, metal clinking, Cramer grumbling about paperwork. Wolfe sat through it all like a monument to calm. When Claiborne was led out, he stopped in the doorway and looked back. "You've ruined powerful men before, Wolfe, but power always returns." Wolfe's voice was soft but absolute. "Not to you." Cramer lingered last, muttering something about his ulcers, then followed his men out. The door closed. Silence returned. Wolfe adjusted his cuffs, exhaled slowly, and said, "Archie, please inform Fritz that supper will proceed after all. I find myself unexpectedly hungry." I shut off the recorder, pocketed the tape, and grinned. "You earned it. So what's next?" He looked at the empty chair across from him, the one Claiborne had occupied, and said, "Now we wait for the next man who believes himself untouchable. They are never punctual, but they always arrive." Fritz must have been listening from the hallway, because the scent of garlic butter hit before I'd even reached the kitchen door. Wolfe's version of celebrating justice looked a lot like gluttony in a tuxedo. Beer poured at a precise angle, roast capon sliced so evenly it could have been done with a ruler. He wasn't smiling, but the deep satisfaction in his eyes was more eloquent than a parade. "Claiborne's arrest will fill tomorrow's newspapers," I said, setting the recorder on the edge of the table. "Front page, maybe even above the fold." "Bah," Wolfe said, waving a hand. "The press will credit Cramer, as usual. They require a man who looks good. In headlines, I prefer accuracy to applause." "Yeah," I said, pouring myself coffee, "but applause pays better." He gave me a glance sharp enough to shave with. "Your compensation, Archie, is the privilege of proximity to intellect." "Privilege noted," I said, still waiting for the raise. Fritz's chuckle floated in from the pantry. Wolfe ignored it, unfolding his napkin like a diplomat preparing a treaty. "Has Cramer taken custody of the ledger?" "Locked and labeled. He'll guard it like a saint's bone." "Good. Then the corruption chain will unravel publicly. There remains one matter, Mrs. Khan." "She's clear," I said. "Saul's escorting her to her sister's place in Albany. She's shaken, but steady." "Then the case is concluded," Wolfe said. "We have earned our supper." That should have been the final note. The curtain call where we fade out to brandy and domestic calm. But that's not how fate behaves around our brownstone. The phone rang before the second slice of capon hit Wolfe's plate. I caught it, a man's voice, unfamiliar, brisk. "Goodwin, this is Lieutenant Rowan. We just pulled a body from the East River. Thought you'd want to know." "Unless it's Claiborne," I said. "You're mistaken." "It's not Claiborne, it's Darnell." I straightened. Darnell was in custody. "Was," Rowan said. "Someone opened his cell with the right keys, left the wrong corpse. No witnesses." I didn't bother with goodbye. Wolfe's fork was still suspended when I turned. "Darnell's dead." He lowered the fork slowly. "Murdered?" "River delivery. Inside man at the precinct. Cramer's going to blow his mustache off." Wolfe closed his eyes, thinking. "Claiborne's insurance," he murmured. "Eliminate the subordinate who could implicate him further." "But the timing, too fast," I said. "He's already locked up." "Indeed," Wolfe said, opening his eyes. "Which means the rot extends beyond Claiborne's circle. Someone else authorized the cleanup." I grabbed my hat. "Want me to go fishing at the morgue?" He shook his head. "No, you will go to Cramer. Observe, listen, do not speak more than necessary. We must know who grants invisibility to murder." Cramer's office looked like someone had thrown an argument at the furniture. He was standing over a desk piled high, with papers and half a dozen coffee cups. When he saw me, he didn't bark, which meant he was worried. "Don't start, Goodwin," he said. "You heard about Darnell?" Wolfe just did. "Then you know what a mess this is. 2 men dead, one of them under my roof. I can't find who signed the release order." "Any guesses?" Cramer rubbed his temple. Half my department could have done it for the right handshake. Claiborne's lawyer's already screaming frame job. Judges talking bail. He'll walk. He'll stroll, Cramer said bitterly. Unless Wolfe's tape holds up, your fancy recorder better have caught more than his diction. It caught enough, I said. But if Darnell's gone, the chain of proof just lost a link. Cramer slammed a folder shut. Tell Wolfe I'm not burying this. But if Claiborne slips away, the commissioner will make it my funeral. Then we'll dig the grave deeper, I said. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe hadn't moved much except his eyes. They were tracking a mental pattern across the ceiling. I gave him the update. He listened, expression unreadable. Darnell's death, he said finally, is Claiborne's last defense. Confusion. Remove the subordinate, muddy the hierarchy, claim innocence through chaos. Then we cut through the mud. Yes, he said, but precision requires leverage. He gestured toward the phone. Call Saul. When Saul arrived, Wolfe gave instructions like a surgeon. Find every officer who had access to the holding cells. Trace the call logs between the precinct and Metro Federal. There will be one signal unaccounted for, likely from a private exchange linked to Claiborne's counsel. Saul nodded and left. The office sank into that quiet I've learned to respect, the kind that means Wolfe's mind was drawing circles around someone's neck. Hours, minutes maybe, passed. Then the phone rang again. Wolfe gestured for me to take it. Saul's voice came through, brisk but charged. Archie, got the pattern. The release order came from a number registered to a judge's clerk. Judge Harwood, the same judge who's about to hear Claiborne's bail petition. I relayed it. Wolfe's mouth compressed. Predictable, he said. Corruption is contagion. Once infected, it spreads through convenience. So what's the cure? I asked. He leaned forward. Exposure, timed precisely. He reached for the recorder again, rewound it, and listened to Claiborne's voice for a few seconds. Then he stopped it and said, Archie, call Cramer. Tell him to delay Claiborne's bail hearing until morning. I will provide new evidence before dawn. Evidence? He lifted the receiver of the second phone, dialed a number from memory. Judge Harwood's chambers, he said when someone answered. Inform his clerk that Nero Wolfe requests a private word regarding the Viridian case. He listened, then smiled faintly. Excellent. I shall expect him within the hour. When he hung up, I asked, You just invited the inside man to tea? Of course, he said. Men who believe they serve power rather than justice cannot resist flattering the stronger voice. The knock came 40 minutes later. The clerk was nervous, mid-30s, hair damp at the temples. He looked around like the orchids might be wired for sound, which, incidentally, they were. Wolfe gestured to the red leather chair. You have facilitated the death of a prisoner, Mr. Voss, Wolfe said calmly. You will now facilitate the preservation of your freedom. The man blanched. I don't know what you... Wolfe raised a hand. Spare me. The line you used to issue Darnell's release order has been traced. The only question remaining is whether you prefer confession or arrest, he sagged. It wasn't my choice. Judge Harwood, he said it came from the top. Claiborne promised appointments, influence. I just did what I was told. Wolfe nodded once. You will now call Judge Harwood. Tell him Nero Wolfe possesses documents implicating him in obstruction. Invite him here, immediately. If you fail, I shall summon Cramer instead. Voss hesitated only a second before dialing. His voice trembled through the conversation, but the result was clear. Harwood was on his way. When the line clicked off, Wolfe said quietly, Archie, please open the safe. Prepare the recorder. You think the judge will confess? No, Wolfe said. But he will lie, and lies, once recorded, arrange themselves into confession. The clock ticked toward midnight again. The same hour this case had begun, the same hour it seemed determined to end. Wolfe sat motionless, eyes fixed on the door, his patience as still and heavy as stone. The doorbell sounded with the kind of politeness only guilt can afford. Fritz opened it, and Judge Harwood stepped in, a trim man with the face of someone accustomed to having laws bend toward him. His hat was perfect, his smile was not. Wolfe didn't rise to greet him. He never did for men who mistook office for stature. "Mr. Wolfe," Harwood said, "I was told this was urgent." "My clerk," "Your clerk," Wolfe interrupted, "is in my confidence. You, alas, are not." The judge's face tightened. "If this is about the Viridian case, I suggest you take it up in chambers. Dragging judicial officers into your parlor tricks borders on contempt." "I leave contempt to those who deserve it," Wolfe said. "Please sit." Harwood hesitated. Then he sat, as if gravity had taken sides. I switched on the recorder, subtle enough that he didn't notice. Wolfe's eyes half closed in thought. Never a good omen for the other man. "Your collaboration with Arthur Claiborne," Wolfe began, "was intended to preserve an empire of bribery. His ledger contained your name twice. Once beside an appointment, once beside an instruction. You may pretend ignorance of the first. The second, however, was to authorize the release of Nathan Darnell from custody under false pretenses." Harwood's hand twitched toward his coat pocket, but Wolfe's voice cut him off. "Don't. If you produce a weapon in my house, you will leave it here. Embedded." The man froze. Wolfe leaned forward an inch. "You ordered that release because Claiborne demanded it. Darnell knew too much. Claiborne promised your re-election fund would thrive, and you accepted the price of silence. Unfortunately, silence drowned with your accomplice in the river." Harwood tried for indignation, but the sweat betrayed him first. "You have no proof." "I have something better," Wolfe said. "Confluence." He reached into the drawer and produced the ledger's duplicate page, the one Wolfe had made before handing the original to Cramer. "Your handwriting, your annotation, your seal, and—" he gestured toward Voss, standing pale near the bookshelf, "your subordinate who has confessed." Voss swallowed hard. "I didn't mean, Judge, they forced me." Harwood shot him a look that could have peeled paint. "You fool." "Yes," Wolfe said, "a fool who will survive. You, however, will not, politically or legally." Harwood's composure snapped. "Claiborne's finished. He'll take everyone down with him. I only—" "Precisely," Wolfe said, voice rising slightly. "You only followed the hierarchy of corruption. Each man serves another until the structure collapses under the weight of its own cowardice. Mr. Goodwin." I slid the phone toward Wolfe. He pressed a single button. "Inspector Cramer," he said. "You may come in now." The door to the hallway opened immediately. Cramer entered with 2 detectives and the kind of satisfaction he saves for Christmas raids. "Evening, Judge," he said. "Nice of you to drop by uninvited." Harwood half rose, then sat again, beaten before the cuffs appeared. Cramer's men moved quick, efficient. The judge's voice cracked as they read him his rights. "You'll regret this, Wolfe," he spat. "Every man who's ever crossed the bench has." "Not every man," Wolfe said calmly. "Only the guilty." When the door closed behind the last officer, the silence that remained was thick enough to carve. Voss looked like a man deciding whether to thank us or faint. Wolfe dismissed him with a flick of his fingers. "You will testify, Mr. Voss, then disappear into whatever anonymity guilt allows." He nodded, stumbled out. The door shut. I exhaled. "That ties it. Claiborne, the judge, the ledger, it's all wrapped." Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled, the faintest tremor of satisfaction in his voice. "Wrapped, yes. But justice seldom stays sealed. The city will survive another scandal, though I doubt it will improve. Corruption, Archie, is like mildew. It thrives where men prefer darkness. I said, "That's poetic for a man who claims to hate poetry." He grunted. "Observation is not indulgence." I poured him his beer, poured myself coffee, and settled opposite him. The recorder still hummed faintly, a small electric witness to everything that had just unraveled. "So," I said, "what made you certain Harwood was the leak?" "His silence," Wolfe said. "When I mentioned Darnell's death to Cramer, it reached the precinct in 15 minutes. Within an hour, Harwood's clerk telephoned my office pretending to inquire about procedural advice. That curiosity was too prompt. Men who fear exposure often seek to measure it." I nodded. "You fed him the bait." "Of course. The truly guilty always come when summoned. They confuse invitation with reprieve." I leaned back, letting it settle in. Wolfe took his first long sip of beer, eyes half closing in contentment. "A satisfactory conclusion," he murmured. "Satisfying, sure," I said. "But I could have done without the midnight corpses and the exploding sedan." "You exaggerate," he said mildly. "No sedan truly exploded." "It burned," I said. "An accident," Wolfe said. "Human stupidity with gasoline rarely counts as drama. Tell that to the insurance company." He ignored me and reached for another slice of capon. "Archie, see that the recording is duplicated and stored. Then prepare a transcript for the district attorney. After that, you may inform Mr. Cramer that I consider the affair concluded." "And after that?" I asked. "Sleep," he said. "The world will continue misbehaving without my supervision." I smiled, "But not without your interference." He gave a small, reluctant sound that might have been amusement. "Touché, Mr. Goodwin." The office light glowed warm across the rug, turning the night outside into glass. The orchids upstairs breathed quietly, the city's noise filtering through the window like distant static. For a long minute, nothing moved but the curl of smoke from Wolfe's discarded match. Another case solved, another fool unmasked, another round of justice conducted with civility and appetite. And me? I just sat there, coffee cooling, thinking how the world never runs out of midnight appointments.